Hello, and welcome to Andrew Broussard Watercolors. Today I'm continuing my exploration of various home printing techniques. This one that I'm going to start out with is exploring the Drypoint etching. Prior to this, I used an aluminum can, soda can, that I cut open, cut into a rectangle, and then scratched into it. This time I'm experimenting with the lid of just a salad container. I think fast food containers and other type of containers can be used as well. With the can method, I've been having trouble due to the curvature and getting it to flatten. And I think that maybe prepping the size of my can and putting underneath books and getting it to lay flat for a few days might be the answer. I'm also having difficulty getting my ink into the scratch marks. I haven't determined if it's just the size of my scratch marks yet, or the way that I'm applying it, or even the depth of the scratches. Okay, so I cut this rectangle out. I'm just working small size with this. We've been playing with a cat shape, so I'm going to continue that cat shape. I anticipate this being easier to scratch. I could take an image and put it on that paper underneath, and then from there trace it. I'm just using the same image. At this point, the image is kind of engraved in my head, pun intended, of Steinleit's cats. Just a sketch looking at a cat from the back. Definitely scratches differently than the aluminum can. The aluminum can, you start getting the aluminum particles floating around on the paper and on your desk. And being barefoot in the art room, and stuff like that makes me nervous, because I'm sure we've all gotten splinters or little pieces in our feet at some point in our life. The scratch, pretty simple. If this starts giving difficulty with its results, I'm gonna then expand to looking at maybe blunting the end of this or finding a wider point. Okay. Now, with the ink itself, with the YouTube videos and Patreon, and all the supporters that help out the channel, and the super thanks that people send, which I really super appreciate. This round of purchases have been going towards art supplies in this exploration. Though, at the end of the day, I think that some of the supplies that I wind up getting or having can cross over to a lot of other mediums. And the paper alone, I'll probably be sitting just within the watercolor paper or the drawing paper when I do these. Anywho, so this is the, I can't pronounce it correctly. I've never heard somebody pronounce it. The Akua Intaglio Ink. It comes like really highly recommended online. An 8-ounce container of it seems to fluctuate between $6 to $19, depending on the pigment that's within it. So far I have the bone black, which jumped out to me because it had talked about just a variety of tones, and that leads to other experiments I'm going to look at. It also, I have the Van Dyke brown because I'm just a big fan of that approach. Originally I was using a card to pick up ink and put it on and spread it throughout. This is my first time trying the palette knife itself, and I think this is the way easier method. Though if you don't have a palette knife on hand, I would think just use the card. I also put out palette paper wax paper or plastic palette would work as well. That's what I have on the side. I'll show it right here because I plan on trying some other experiments after this video. That's why I have that out. So getting the ink into the grooves, into the etches that I made, is where I've been having a lot of difficulty. I'm going to wipe my excess off on the palette paper that I just showed you so that I'm not wasting this this ink. I always get very conservative with like oil paints and other materials, especially because if I'm just starting out with it, I don't know how quickly a tube goes through it. It does have a tendency to hold me back some, that approach, mainly because, you know, you're trying to restrict how much you use, and we've talked about that a lot with watercolor, where, you know, if you put only a small little dab out and you're doing fast and loose, you can restrict yourself and not go all the way. So at this point, there's different cloths, and the Speedball company sells a cloth that is kind of for, I guess, rubbing this ink in or rubbing it around. I don't plan on purchasing that. I'm curious if anybody has used this process or knows the cloth that I'm talking about. I think people use cheesecloth. I've been experimenting with the potato bag, being that it's non-absorbent. And a lot of people use magazine paper. So, or newsprint. Here, I have just an old book that was going to get tossed. Fortunately, so last year we got a new librarian at the school that I work at. Super nice. Previous librarian, super nice as well. But, you know, with the changing of the guard and going through all the books that have been there for generations, ones that are like no longer applicable. Maybe it might be an old book on, I don't know, tax law or something like that. Stuff that changes. So she either gets rid of them and, you know, like pulls them out of the circulation and donates them, or other teachers might snag them to read, or use the covers for their crafts, because those old books with the linen covers, you can use that. And it seems like this fills up so much easier. I'm going to try it with the Van Dyke brown ink in a moment, just to see if that's one of the reasons. Anyway, so old books, even if they're just like no longer applicable, you can use those things. I have this towel. I must have used it during my last watercolor painting session. Try not to be too wasteful with supplies, hence recycling a lid. I'm going to leave some of that ink around because I like that effect in the practice runs what I've been doing. So there we go. Now what I need to do is sandwich it between damp paper, blotter paper, and run it through the spaghetti machine. So let me get my paper ready and I'll be right back. Alright, so I have a whole bunch of paper that I had pre-cut for different experiments. I believe that this is the Stonehenge Akua 140-pound cold press. So the texture is obviously going to have an effect on it, but I'm really just looking in the beginning stages, not trying to make a perfect product or image, just trying to figure out the approach that works for me. I think that ultimately maybe like a seminar, something like that would be a great way to start out and learn these processes. And I'm just dabbing in between the two, so I think it's dry enough. And I try to reuse this paper, like I said, just so we can be, you know, more friendly to the environment. Real quick, when I was grabbing my other materials, you could see ones that I did last time, and this was in an aluminum can, and it was on different papers. We'll compare that again in a few. I have this cover that I had cut off a book. The reason I did that, it was slightly harder texture, and one mistake that I did last time was not make the ink side face the paper. The paper is supposed to, wetting it is supposed to help the fibers swell and absorb it more. I think that's all we need. Now I have this spaghetti maker. I bought it off Amazon for about 25 bucks. I looked online to see if anybody had any that they were getting rid of. Apparently it's one of those things that people buy and then never utilize. I'm going to try to put it so you can kind of see, but unfortunately, since I'm just have that downward view, that's going to restrict this. But I have it sandwiched. I'm trying to hold it there, and I'm going to run it through the spaghetti maker. Okay. And I think once you get the plastic in, then everything will hold together. And since the spaghetti maker wants to fall out the side, I'm going to show you that, how it comes out an angle. So that's an issue with that. And that's why I'm staying small scale and not using copper plates or anything. I might have to lower this a setting to make it a little bit wider, because this is definitely manhandling it. Okay. So it went all the way through. Unfortunately, it didn't feed that last bit. Pull it out and we'll see. Other people, there's other type of rollers and stuff on the market. And I talked to one of my coworkers that teaches the ag class, and he had some ideas of what to do. So I'm going to look into different things. All right, so I think this is our best print so far. So this is the black Intaglio ink on recycled plastic and just running it through the spaghetti maker. I'll show you the can etching side by side so you can see how that looked. And you can see where the grooves are in the darker spots, but where it missed a lot of the grooves. So I think we get a wider mark with the plastic, ultimately making it easier to fill in most likely, and then from there getting a printed result. Though now the question is what can we do about this angle that it offset? So I'm going to pause the camera, we're going to ink up, and we'll soak some more water and we'll do a second run. Now, as I ink up, I just want to point out I'm most likely cropping this video just so we can see the wooden area. So if some things are off camera, I apologize. It's just mainly cropping so we could see a lot more of what's taking place. That just helps it zoom in. But I film on a zoomed in setting. The camera wants to start adjusting its focus. So that's the reason I'm doing that. Now the knife is definitely a lot easier to spread this ink. I'm going to look at monotype in a following video in a bit. And the monotype, as I was reading that, and I tried it the other day, the monotype with the metal tools to apply might scratch the surface. Here, I'm not too concerned because I'm just using it as an application and I'm not going on the side with the knife, but that's something to keep in mind. I believe it's recommended to use potentially plastic palette knives depending on what you're doing the monotype on. So this is the Drypoint and inking. This fills up really easily. I can see that right now that this might be the material to go with. A lot of people, I see the polishing motion, and I think the polishing motion has a circle, will have all the angles in it, all directions that you'll hit it from, and that'll help push it into those spots. I've also read people will say be careful that you don't cut through the entire material depending on you're working with, but I believe that I was reading that one lady had success using like super thin transparency paper. A few other things to note. What are some other things? Okay, so your image is going to reverse, so we saw that. I didn't really harp on that, but you're only going to get a limited number of prints out of it. I believe some people say 4 or 5, mainly due to, I think, the weakness of the material. But that being said, I'm not sure how long copper and other plates would last, but I'm sure you need better materials. You'll probably need a sharpener for the scribing tool. It'll probably wear down a lot quicker than using it against aluminum or plastic. I don't plan on trying copper anytime soon. I don't know if I'd ever go that far with it. I think that this would be a good way to make a limited run of prints. Like I've been saying, I've just been practicing with the Steinlen cat. It's a super easy sketch that I have just kind of in my head. We're going to blot off our paper, and then we'll run this one through. It's still damp from the previous blot. This, I think, is 90-pound paper. Stonehenge Akua drawing, 100%. No, it's not Stonehenge Akua, it'd be Stonehenge Legion. 90%, 90-pound, but 100% cotton. That should be enough blotting. Oh, nope, some areas seem still damp. Let's flip it over. That side too is damp. Get one more sheet. All right, I'll let this pile of blotting paper dry. We'll set up our setup. Okay, so with the previous one, I put my ink, my image face up. I'm gonna try to get this nice and centered. I'm sure you could probably take lines and different tools to set things in place. Now, my main concern with this one is the shifting of the plate that took place. So we're going to use the spaghetti roller. If I move it out one setting, hope that's a little wider. That should be one setting. There we go. And this is just a cheap spaghetti roller just to experiment with, and then down the line, if I want to try something bigger, we'll see. Okay, so once it hits the plastic, it wants to bind. So once you get it onto the plastic, then we're good. I have to go underneath to push it out on an angle. There is a video where a woman made a portable small press, taking one of these. The base comes off. We'll flip it over in a moment before we do our big reveal so I can show you what I'm talking about. Yeah, there's the screws right here. So she took that off and mounted it so that it was sideways, and she could feed the paper right through without that curve. So the curve has some limitations on it, and most likely, I don't know if copper and stuff would work. Let's see our reveal. That is our lid on top. All right, we're gonna pull the print. Oh, that went really good. That stayed a lot more in line. The drawing paper is a different consistency, same brand, different weight and process. Let's take a look. Move this down here. Okay, so here's our first one where we went into it and we went in on a little bit of an angle. This paper is a little bit heavier paper, and it does have an embossed effect where it's kind of pushed in, so raised outside, pushed in inside. This one does not have that effect. Maybe a little down here, but I did switch the setting a little bit wider to make it easier to go through, but it does go through on the tighter setting. Looking at these, the image is still there, so I'm assuming we could get a few more prints out of the scratch if we want to, but compared to our initial scratch etchings, I think this is a vast improvement, and I'm going to continue explorations using plastic as opposed to aluminum can at the moment. So on that note, definitely different lines and a different fillability. All right, I hope you enjoyed. Please like, subscribe, follow. If you have any questions, let me know down below. This is me still learning and exploring this, so if you have any ideas or people that you recommend, or if I can find people that I could recommend for this, I'll let you all know. All right, I hope you all enjoyed, and have a great day. Bye-bye.